Oh, damn it. Canada's biggest Islamist apologist said he had penned his final column for the Toronto Star way back in April 2015. But Haroon Siddiqui, he's kind of like Jason Voorhees of Friday the 13th. You know, just when you think he's being permanently dispatched, he pops up yet again to generate even more misery. Indeed, Siddiqui penned a kind of comeback column in the Toronto Star a few days ago, and I knew I was just going to love this yarn from the headline alone. Quote, Canada's news media are contributing to mistrust of Muslims. Now, the column was actually an excerpt from a lecture Siddiqui delivered at the Aga Khan Museum, in which he argued that the media have contributed to, quote, widespread Islamophobia by conflating Muslim terrorists with all Muslims. In doing so, he said, the media are violating their own declared principles of fair and ethical journalism. The biggest culprits, he says, are the National Post and the Post Media group of newspapers. What? No mention of us at Rebel Media? How dare he? But let's do a quickie dissection of Siddiqui's column, shall we? It begins in a weirdly incestuous way. Namely, Siddiqui, the ex-Toronto Star columnist, quotes John Honderich, the current Tor Star chairman of the board. Siddiqui asks Honderich if he thinks there's been an anti-Muslim bias in the media. And Honderich replies, yes, there is, especially in the post-media newspapers. A factoid that was already established in the preceding paragraph. I guess Siddiqui subscribes to repetition, just in case we have trouble paying attention. Then Siddiqui interviews another Toronto Star John, this time John Cruikshank, the Star's publisher. Cruikshank states that a big segment of the Canadian media has been peddling flat-out racism and bigotry against Canadian Muslims. Really? You know, in recent days, we've shown that the precise opposite is true. We've reported on mainstream media outlets going out of their way to cover up bullying incidents in a Halifax school and a sex assault spree in a Lethbridge pool because the alleged perpetrators were Muslim migrants. Oh, but never mind. Siddiqui then goes on to note that, quote, hardly a week goes by without these publications finding something or other wrong with Muslims and Islam, end quote. Yeah, but then again, hardly a day goes by without an act of terrorism being committed somewhere in the world in the name of Islam. This cannot be ignored or whitewashed. By the way, for those keeping score at home, the website religionofpeace.com notes that Islamic terrorists have now carried out precisely 28,167 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. Oh, but by the time you Google this, folks, the number will be higher, unfortunately. Yet Siddiqui steers clear of this inconvenient truth. It just doesn't fit with that whole media is biased and all Muslims are victims narrative. Now I'll skip ahead to some of Siddiqui's ever-helpful suggestions when it comes to the press reporting on Islam, such as, quote, give us a range of views, not just those that might confirm your own prejudices. The CBC commentator, Rex Murphy, has advanced questionable propositions about Muslims. He is free to express his views, of course, but where's the counter-opinion on the taxpayer-supported CBC, end quote. Where's the counter-opinion? Haroon, the CBC counter-opinion is broadcast every minute Rex Murphy isn't pontificating. Another Siddiqui suggestion is, quote, don't find excuses to attribute crimes by Muslims to their religion. Use the same standard for them as for other people. But how can one not bring religion into the question when a terrorist tends to utter Allahu Akbar prior to hitting the detonation button? And another suggestion, quote, resist generic photos of niqab-wearing women when the story has little or nothing to do with the niqab. You create the impression that most Muslim women wear it, whereas the number who do is a tiny, tiny minority, end quote. Curiously, Siddiqui doesn't weigh in on where he stands on the Islamic beekeeper costume, but why do I get this feeling he doesn't mind that some women in 21st century Canada are being forced to wear this demeaning fabric coffin? Finally, Siddiqui signs off in an unintentionally funny way. Namely, he describes himself as an incurably optimistic Canadian. But how perversely ironic that a self-described optimistic Canadian is also such a shameless apologist for many in his community who reject and despise Canadian values. Oh, but what do I know? I'm just a cog in that biased Islamophobic media machine. And I'd like to make a joke about shooting the messenger, but somebody out there might take it literally. For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.